Welcome back, everyone, to the Creative James Media YouTube channel. Today, we have another wonderful interview for you. Today, we're going to be chatting with Mariah Stillbrook about her upcoming book, Hall of Shadows, Hobbies, writing styles, just literally anything we can get into today. There is no limit. So, without further ado, Mariah, how are you?
I'm great. Great to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time to join me. I know it's things are busy.
Well,
So it's understatement for some of us.
yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit?
So I'm Mariah Stillbrook. I've been writing for my whole life pretty much, but my first book came out last year and in the Pines. And it's a witchy, like practical magic meets original charmed book. My second book came out earlier this year. The Lost Irvine is a young adult urban fantasy. I like to call that my Narnia meets Throne of Glass or Harry Potter meets Throne of Glass book. It's a little quirky, a little dark.
Could go
And
both ways.
what was that?
It could go both ways,
It could
honestly.
go both ways.
It could go both.
And then I have my next book is coming out this November, and it's called Hall of Shadows, and it is about a mysterious book, a cursed deck of oracle cards, and 13 dimensions of shadow work.
Oof. Sounds like all things that I don't even want to touch because I'm just like, I don't know what's gonna happen.
You'll only find out in the shadows of your
Oh,
heart.
that's a place I don't want to be. Because we just released as well. We just released the hardcover of In the
We
Pines,
did.
with exclusive artwork. If you guys haven't seen that, you need to check it out. Buy the book first and foremost, but
Yeah.
if not, on all of our socials, we do have pictures of the artwork that's featured inside. Um, Tell us a little bit about Hall of Shadows. Like, how did this come about for you? What's the story behind it?
Well, as a practicing witch, I do a lot of shadow work, which is pretty much just like addressing the ugly, the gritty, nitty gritty, the parts of yourself that you've kind of society's almost been like, hey, let's bury that, okay?
Yep.
Like, no.
Let's
But
dumb
then
this down.
yeah, and then you keep it all in here and then you explode. So it's really just like making peace with the pieces of yourself that are not peaceful. So I've always wanted to write a book about shadow work, but it was actually my husband that came up with this idea. He's a firefighter. And he was like, what if you had a character who could like touch ashes and bring them back to life? Like what
Ooh.
the ashes were, bring it back. And I was like, holy shit. That fits in perfectly with this idea I have. I just hadn't I'd already had the character come to me. I just really wasn't sure what she was capable of yet. So yeah, that's where it really started. This idea that what if she touches a pile of ashes and a cursed deck of oracle cards comes back to life?
Ooh.
And what if those oracle cards take her into shadow work dimensions? So
That has, I'm be honest, that gives me goosebumps. I'm just like, oh, okay. Can of worms that we're opening. I don't know if we can close it.
oh, we
So
do not close that. That's open now. Be careful. Be careful when you
right.
touch those
Also be
terrible
careful
oracle
what you wish
cards.
for.
Yes.
So funny question then. Has your husband, does he constantly remind you like, hey, this book wouldn't be here if I wouldn't have given you the idea?
He just says 20% goes to the house. Which duh, but when you're married, it's not
It already is
included
anyways.
anymore anyway.
Uh, I had to ask because it's just such a funny idea, and just imagine you sitting there at the dinner table and he's like, so how's my book going?
Right? And it's really funny because my husband's not a reader. I think it's actually why we've been married for so long because we met in 2005. And at first I was like, how can I be with someone who doesn't read, let alone will never read anything I write? And after all these years together, I'm like, no, that's a blessing. It is.
It can be, yeah. Because I'll be honest. Everybody asks me, they're like, "Oh, hey, did you read this book? Did you read so and so's book?" And I just have to be honest. I'm like, "Look, guys, I don't read much. Uh, And when I do, I have to be very picky about what I read because I literally have to do it every day at work.
Right.
So your story, and I'm not saying people's stories are terrible. I'm just saying like it has to be a particularly interesting enough for me to be like, oh my God, I have to pick this up.
Yeah, I've
Um,
been there. I've always been
so
a reader, but, like, I understand where you're coming from because 'cause I've had, like, jobs in the past where it was just impossible, to
yeah,
get
it's
to that. Now I read more than I ever have, but
right.
I also have a 4-year-old, so the way I read is a little interesting, but it works, it happens, I get there, but whew.
It's the end result is what's important, right?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
it doesn't matter what road we take. It just matters that we took the road.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I still buy books. I keep them for when I feel like I'm gonna be able to read them. But
I'm
it's like,
surrounded by books that I've never read yet because I have a real problem with that.
yeah, yeah, I'm growing on that problem. Because you guys keep writing books that I want to read, but I don't have time to read them, so I buy them anyways, and then they sit in the closet, and then I'm like, I
And they're
really need
also
to.
pretty.
Yes. Oh my God. The cover of The Lost Irwin. Oh Lord, that is such a colorful cover.
I love
Like
it.
that's
Yeah.
that's what caught my eye about it. I'm like, okay, let me read the back here. Let me see what it says. Okay, yeah. Add to cart. We're gonna get that one. Get that one. So yeah, it's buying is the problem.
Mhm.
Buying is easy, but having the time is hard. So
It
that's
truly is. And then when
yeah.
you're an author and like right now I am talking, speaking of the Irwine trilogy, it's like I'm working on the second 2 books that are finished but editing. So I'm just reading them.
Yep.
So it's like I had a friend ask me the other day, "What are you reading currently?" And I'm like, "I don't have a book open." It's bizarre because I'm just rereading the same stuff I've written over and over, but
I have to the same thing with mine. I have 3 different stories going right now, and I'm just like, I can't I can't read some I can't stop. I can't read something else. It's gonna break my train of thought. Like, I just can't.
yeah.
But I'll keep them for when I do.
Yes. When you can get out of the editing and watching out for plot holes and all the other fun things we get to look for.
Yeah, that and then I pretty much have to, read your guys' stuff all the time. So, it's like I'm constantly going through people's books and blurbs and covers, and I'm like, okay, I need a break from all things book for just a little bit. Um, was there a particular character or scene in this book that you feel was harder to write than the rest of them?
In Hall of Shadows, not really, but also I wrote one of the very first books I ever wrote, those things that you don't talk about anymore.
Yep.
Um, it was actually called Night Terrors and Roses, and which is a name of a chapter, or it's a name of one of the dimensions that
Ooh,
my character goes through. And so it was a totally different story, and it was not very good because it wasn't meant to be seen. It was a practice book, but like a lot of these characters were formed in there, and they're different now. They've evolved, but since I'd already kind of written them, I guess it just kind of flowed right into there. You know what I mean? Like they finally
yep.
had a home. So
That's
I don't
how. Go ahead.
know that I was just to say I don't think any of them were terribly difficult to write.
That's how mine was too. Is I had um, my book that's coming out. I wrote like 2 paragraphs and I forgot about it. And I was cleaning out my Google Drive and I was like, "What is this?" So I read it and I was like, "Okay."
A fun little treat that you found.
Yeah, it was like, "Oh, I didn't even." Maybe one day I thought I was gonna do the thing of being an author, and I'm like, "No, no." So I was like, "Oh, okay." So I had to write backstory because I hadn't really written anything. So I had characters, but I lucked out because I didn't have to rewrite. I just wrote it the way I wanted it. Um, on that same note, kind of, is there a character that was the most fun for you to write? Like, which one would you say that you had the most fun with?
I mean, the main character is obviously fun because she's like the angsty piece of me when I was like 16, or she's 15, but that angsty teenager. So I had a lot of fun with her. But it's her grandfather and her grandmother are who created this underworld that she ends up going to.
Okay.
And she didn't even know she had a grandfather. Well, everyone has a grandfather, but didn't know he still existed somewhere, um, until she gets into like, oh my gosh, my family. What's up with my family? Like, and she finds this deck of oracle cards and starts piecing everything together. The grandfather's name is Cage, and he's one of my favorite things ever. Like probably one of my favorite characters ever. But I don't want to talk about him too much.
Yeah, no, it's just,
He's
you
kind
guys
of,
got to go read it when it,
yeah, people
you
need to
know,
find him. But there
it's a
will be,
pre-order.
yeah, yes, pre-order right
Go
now.
get it.
But he is essentially like she's kind of trying to figure out this whole time because this world is all about facing yourself and shadow work is a good thing, but there are monsters in this book and there are
Okay.
some things that aren't so great. So she's trying to figure out like is he good or is he bad? Is she good or is she bad because she comes from this? So I love it because I love psychology. Um and there's just so much to dissect with all of these characters in this book.
Right. So you'd say it's like it's basically a journey of finding herself.
Hmm.
Pretty much, she's trying to discover where she came from, where she's going, what she wants to be.
Who she will become, which is a big one.
I mean, not giving too much away, but yeah, um, how do you? I know everybody does it different, but how do you personally handle writer's block and times when you're just having that imposter syndrome, creative doubt that you're like, "Ugh, all of this is trash. I just need to get rid of it," or vice versa, where you're like, I can't, nothing's coming out.
So both times I usually decide to take a break. Um, because I can't reset otherwise. Like writer's block is pretty easy for me to navigate because I work out a lot and like I just tune in some music or something and run or ride my bike or lift weights and it's like it just gets the creative juices going for me or take a hike, go
Right.
outside. And sometimes it doesn't just come back.
Mhm.
Sometimes it does. Sometimes it's months. I mean, I think I took like years off at one point just because I was younger and trying to figure everything out and it was hard. Um, but however long the break needs to be, I do that. If it's going on months, usually I'll start just doing writing sprints and stuff to get my brain going. But it's like that depressive imposter syndrome that's the worst.
Mhm.
And really, the only thing that I can do for that is take a break and just be like, you need some space from this
Right.
world. Because it's just, especially, I'm sure you know this, like if you're in that headspace and you try to work on your stuff, you might
Mhm.
erase all of your stuff or throw
Yeah.
your computer somewhere bad. So
Exactly.
you just
Yeah.
have to know, when to
Yeah.
step aside.
I think too, it's one thing that you have to, I'll put it in a way, like you have to know yourself, and kind of realize, hey, I'm starting to reach my limit on what I think I can do, or I've been hitting this too hard for so long. Maybe take a break before, this kind of transpires. Um, One thing I do too is like I'll switch. Like I have several stories going at once. So if I get
Mhm.
stuck on one, I'll take a break for like a complete day and then I'll move to another one and then make room on that one and then take a break and then maybe go back to the other one.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a really good
so
idea too.
it's it's harmful and it's helpful. I'll say that
Mm.
because you're like, oh man, you have a deadline for one book and then you get stuck on it and you go work on this other one and then you're like, now I'm so enthralled in this one and I just want to finish, but you got to tear yourself away because you have to finish the other project. So it's good and bad.
Yeah, and once you're, like, in this, like, groove of publishing, it never fails. Like,
Mhm.
if you're starting to work on a project you can't wait to work on, your inbox will get filled with edits or something like that. And
Yep.
you're like, oh, I gotta pause and like go back to that.
Exactly. 100%. It never fails. At least, at least once a week. And it's
But it's a
just,
good problem to have.
oh yeah, it really is. You know, it's not like I'm like complaining like, oh man, this is so terrible. It's a good problem to have, but you just have to be aware and
Mhm.
navigate it the right way. um, are there any particular authors that you would say that you've kind of drawn inspiration from over the years to write these books?
Yes. Unfortunately, I feel like they've all been canceled because they've done things or said things, but like I absolutely love Neil Gaiman's work. Um, and I will continue to read him just because I can separate things.
Yep.
And his stories are magical. Like, just love his stories. Um, and also, I went through a lot when I was younger. I had a really bad eating disorder and I stopped reading for a while. So I will never, ever hate Harry Potter because that brought me back into reading. I
Right.
was like, in college and trying to get over this horrible disease, and I just hadn't read forever. And I started reading Harry Potter, and then I just started reading all over again. And then I remembered, hey, you like to write. So it's like, I have to give thanks for that.
Right.
But yeah,
Also,
those are a couple of my favorites. But also, I am a horror writer also. And Robert McCammon,
oh yes,
bow before the master. I mean, come on, right?
wonderful writer, very
What's your
talented.
favorite book by him?
Oh God, you're gonna make me pick.
Uh-huh.
Mm, I'm not gonna pick. I'm not gonna pick.
Ah,
No, because
they're
um,
so good.
there's two in the closet that I don't even think I've even read yet.
Really? You've read Swan Song though, right?
Yes, yes, I
Okay,
have
good.
read that one.
That's my favorite.
Um, that's probably about the only one I've fully gotten through. Like I said, there's a box in the closet that I really want to get into it, but I suppose I should be responsible for my own author career and kind of kind of get what I've promised back out to the masses.
Taking those responsibilities.
I know. I just want to run away, take a box of books, you know,
Don't we
and
all?
just go. Um, so this is kind of a different question, but I like to ask it to people because it kind of gets people thinking. So, what risks have you taken with your writing that have paid off? So, like, switching genres or completely changing the perspective the book is written from, those kinds of things.
Um, Probably, I don't think it's a risk, but I think other people do. Like In the Pines is written from multiple points of view because it's about two sisters, and that it's not just, I mean, I think you could probably argue that Olivia is the main character, but it's Olivia and Ellie, and it goes back and forth. And I think it's really important for the story to hear from both. And I did, before CJM picked it up, I did have an agent who looked at it, and she didn't even represent fantasy. And she was like, if you wrote this whole thing from Ellie's point of view, I will take this. And I was like, no.
Why? Then it's not
So
the story.
yeah, I was like, I get why she said that because Ellie is so angsty, and she was like, I haven't read this character before. Like, I want all of it from her. So I could see her side of things, but I was just like, no, I'm
Right.
not doing that. So that's
That's
probably, it was risky for me to like have that agent within grasp and to be like,
right.
I'm not doing that.
Yeah, that pretty much changed the entire course of the book because you've
Hmm.
already written it for two characters. I don't even want to imagine where that would go to have to strip it back to take it down to one character.
Yeah. Well, and especially because a lot of the trials and tribulations that go on are from Olivia.
Right.
Like, she's where everything stems from. So I'm just like, huh?
Kind
Just
of caught you off
a
guard.
normal person doesn't mean that I should take her away.
Right. Um, are you a person who plays music or has the TV on while you're writing?
So funny enough, before 4-year-old, before child at all, I did. I'm a bit spectrumy, never been diagnosed, but it's all up in my family. So I know I've got like sensory issues and all this stuff,
Right.
right? So I'm really weird about that. It's kind of mood dependent, but before I had noises going off all over my house all the time, I actually preferred a little stimulation. So I would play the Harry Potter movies or like the Lost Boys or any horror movie very low, just in the background. And for
Right.
some reason, I liked that. But, and I have been known to play like instrumentals, or like I really like the Civil Wars, that kind of music. Putting that like really lightly. I do that sometimes, but I do write more in silence now than I ever have because I don't hear silence.
Yeah, it sounds like it's few and far in between for you right now.
It is.
Yeah, because I people look at me weird because I have music on and it's loud.
Mhm.
I have it piping through the headphones, and I can't for some reason I can't write if it's quiet. I just can't. I for some reason it stifles the creativity. I don't. It sounds weird, but I don't know why. It just is the way it is. So
I can
I just
understand that.
it's always it's people like I don't understand how you can do that. I'm like, believe me, I don't either. But
This
it's just
writers be crazy and we just do what we do in the moment. I don't know.
mhm. Pretty much, we are a different breed, and I try to tell people that, and they don't understand. And I'm like, look, one day you will.
Yeah. When we got married, someone gave my husband a book that was like living with a writer. Of course, he didn't read it because he doesn't read, so he wasn't warned properly.
Oh, that's great. This should be a what is that book? They should do one on how to live with authors for dummies.
Right?
Just make it a manual. If you
Just
see
put the
this going
point.
on, yeah. If you see this going on, just slowly back away, but bring coffee.
And
um,
treats. We like snacks too.
yes. Oh God. Some of us a little too much. What would you say is the most valuable piece of advice you've been given about writing?
Oh, this one's easy for me. It was at a writing workshop, and I am very introverted. Like I can put on a show and everything, but I used to, be on the stage. Yeah, another writer thing, right?
Mhm.
But an in-person workshop years and years ago, it was so awkward. We were in like this huge room and there wasn't that many of us, and they started it out by being like, okay, look around the room. And we're like, oh, okay. All of us all scared and shy. And then they're like, okay, stand up and go sit next to someone you wouldn't ever sit next to. And so we're all like, and then
We already
judging
are.
for like, who sits next to you? Like, why don't you sit next to me? Like they were like, this is what this is about. If you want to be in this industry, you have to get comfortable getting uncomfortable.
Right.
And that has always stuck with me because I think it took me, I mean, I'm 44 and I didn't get in the Pines didn't get picked up till I think I was like 42. And I think I would have gotten a lot further, a lot faster if I had taken that advice because I didn't at first because
Right.
I was like, I'm not comfortable with that at all. I'm not gonna do that. Like
Right.
everything and you do. If you are uncomfortable doing something, then you are doing it right. That is what I would tell somebody.
Yeah. It's the weirdest thing too because I've had people say that to me because I am highly introverted,
Mhm.
and people are like, well, you literally sit here and interview people, and you make conversation really well, and you do X, Y, and Z, and I'm like, yeah, but they're not sitting in my living room.
Yeah. And you're like
you
thinking about
know?
your box of books that you wanna run away with because
Yeah, like,
that's what we do.
pretty much, you have to. The way I put it to my friend is, you basically have to become a master in your mind of kind of running away. You're like, I'm sitting here interviewing you, but I'm honestly thinking about the brisket that I might have later, or
Ooh.
whatever the case may be. You just gotta. It's hard
Yeah.
because man, I I struggle with that. I'm just like, I don't want to people.
Yeah.
I don't want to people today.
I worked at Starbucks for 11 years because I wanted to work on my craft. And that was really hard for me. I mean, I did it and nobody had an idea that it was hard for me. But I mean, because I'm a good actress, but like so many people.
Right? Just your brain's like, oh,
Yeah.
bicycle, bicycle, bicycle. I'm leaving.
Mhm. But I have to admit, I did really good because I only told one lady this one time that I was pretty sure she came out of the ground. For the most part, I just put on a smile and was like, "Oh, I'll take that foam off that latte
Right.
for you." Yeah.
Seriously, you have to though, because it's totally different, and people like, you must not be introverted. You can't be introverted if you act, this way with people. And I'm like, man, there's a difference. The way I described it is I have two selves. I
Mm.
have a public interacting with people self, and I have the I'm at home.
You take
Like,
off your armor,
yep, hang it up when you walk in the door, and
grab an
you know,
animal, grab something to eat.
pretty much. And it's like, if you were to ask the people that are close to me, they'd say he doesn't shut up. But it's like, it's because of who they are. Um, so yeah, because that's my thing. I'm like, I'm so terrified when it's going to come time to do signings and appearances, because I'm like, can I just never be seen and just keep putting this out like a you know
You know what good advice for that though is I get into character when I go do that stuff. Like, but I also have like this brand, like the witch who writes. So I get witched out when I go do my signings and it helps me because it's kind of
yeah.
like, when I was in the plays and I put on a costume and what I wear is arguably a costume because I get so witchy and I mean, it helps me. So I think if you can put yourself into a character.
I mean, I might have to try that, because that's one thing. Like, I can do these conversations, and I can work, and I can do those things, but it's like, I think it's partially because of the fact it's like, I'm there trying to sell my book, and I don't like
I don't
selling
like this.
things. Like, I could help you sell your book all day long,
Right?
but I don't know about mine. So it's like, I think that's kind of more of what it is. It's like, what do I say to get them to come pick it up, and that kind of thing. So
Well, and we're both Midwestern people. And I feel like where we come from, we are people pleasers. Everyone's super nice, maybe a little too nice sometimes.
yeah. Yeah. Also, the fact of, I had to explain it to somebody one time, my last publisher. They're like, "Hey, the list you gave us, everybody said no," and I was like, "I'm not surprised." And they're like, "Well, normally when we call around for our authors, at least one or two places say yes." And I said, "Look, it's the Midwest, and in this specific part of the Midwest, if you can't do something for them or make them money, not gonna happen. It's nothing against you. It's just that's just how the people are."
Yeah.
Um, so it's like, you take them where you can get them, without having to travel a million miles across
Right.
the state, to go do a 2 hour book signing. So it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, Favorite beverage and snack while writing?
Coffee or tea. And the snacks are hard because, like, you have to have your hands and you don't
Yep.
want to get like snack dust on your
Cheetos and
keyboard.
all that
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Ugh, I'm not gonna lie, I forget to eat a lot these days. But my favorite snacks are like cheese and crackers. I love
I
cheese.
do that all the time.
Yeah, cheese and crackers. I eat kind of like a toddler, I guess. So
Sometimes you have to. I mean, you got one, so
yeah, just can't beat it, join
you,
it.
you eat what you can while you can, when you can, and
Yeah.
half the time that requires eating what they're eating.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I love hearing people's answer on that, because generally it's coffee, tea, or water. But the
Mhm.
snacks are the fun part, because everybody's into so many different things that it's like, oh, I am writing, but I still will eat Cheetos, or I still will, I'll do this. And I'm like, yeah, no. um, Outside of releasing, these phenomenal books, what are some of your hobbies?
Like I've said, I work out a lot. Like, I mean, I really I feel better that way. Like I've said, I've had like mental problems in the past, like eating disorders come with a lot of anxiety and it doesn't go away. I'm better and I'm
Mhm.
healthy, but it doesn't go away. It's still in there. So like I'm constantly battling that. So working out helps me a lot. Like the strength, like muscles don't scare me.
Right.
So I like building muscle. I live in Colorado, so I get out and play as much as I possibly can when the weather's beautiful.
Before it gets too cold.
Yep, because I do not like the cold.
It's the same here too. You have to. Ugh,
Yeah.
cold.
So yeah, I like to be out in the sun, however I can get there. But I'm not gonna lie, my life, at least these days, it's a lot of reading and writing, and I don't get to a bunch of activities outside of that.
Right.
But I mean, I get to like 4-year-old activities, but
Hey,
I'm forgetting what it's like to be an adult.
sometimes I think that's probably what we need,
It
honestly.
is.
Just give me a juice box and some figure paints and leave me alone.
Man, juice boxes are so good.
Right. Honestly. Um, so coming up on the last few questions here. Um, this one, what are a few of your favorite things about working with us at Creative James Media?
This is like my first experience with um publishing. So I really love when I first came on because my book wasn't coming out right away. So I had a little while and I didn't know a single thing about publishing at all, other than like trying to get picked up, I didn't know what happened after that. So our CEO, Gene, held a lot of workshops because we had a bunch of authors come on kind of at the same time. And so it was really groovy because we had like a meeting a month and she just taught us a lot of stuff. We learned so much because there was definitely some people who had self-published, so they knew more about the process. But there was also people like me who were like, I don't know what we're doing here. So
Where are we?
yeah, I really appreciated that support. It's nice with a small press because, I do know people who are with bigger publishing houses and they don't talk to them. They have their agent, and they talk through their agent. So here we're talking directly to the people who are publishing our books, and it's kind of cool.
Right.
We're seeing how things work, and I like it. It's almost like publishing college.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
enjoying my experience. I'm really glad it ended, like it started this way.
right. It could have been the other way around. It you know, could have started really crappy and then, you could have gotten stuck with, a vanity press or something like that. And
Yeah.
it can
Yeah. And
always be worse.
I definitely got like a few of those. They were still cold calling back in the days. It was like 12 years ago or something. I got a few of those that would call me. And I was like, what is happening right now? And of course, if you're like trying to get picked up, it's super hard. And you're like, wait, you want to publish my book? And then it's like, oh, wait, what?
I have to do what?
You want money? Oh, probably not. I don't have any of
Yeah,
that.
no.
Oh.
That's it's crazy because I never even knew that existed until I had a friend of mine who was like, "Hey, uh, do you guys charge to publish?" And I was like, "Do we what?
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about?" And he's like, "Yeah, we had to pay XYZ and this and this." I'm like, "No."
It's pretty sad. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people who fall for that.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's I guess just educate yourself honestly. Ask questions and if you know people who are published, ask
Hmm.
because there's so many traps and so many things that it could go way worse.
Yeah.
Um, but
And that's another good point. Like, I would also say to people who are starting out, like, writing community is everything. Um, like I said, it took me a really long time. And I think a big part of that was because I didn't have a community and I didn't know, who to ask, what to ask. And so once I started getting involved with more social media, that's really when I started making friends and like,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, there's the saying that it takes a village, and it's true. It
Oh
really
yeah.
does. I've had, some of our authors are like, "Hey, I've done X, Y, and Z, but I'm out of ideas. What can I do marketing wise? What do you think of this graphic? What?" And I'm like, "Well, I can take a look at it. I mean, you seem to be doing pretty well, but maybe you just change this little dot or change this little dot and give this, a little more description, and you're good." So I think having those people that you can go to and ask, the hard questions
Hmm.
is definitely helpful. Before we end off today, do you have any upcoming signings, events, or anything like that that you would like to share with everybody?
Do. So I will be I'm in Colorado. So if you're in Colorado Springs, Denver area, I am going to be at the Briargate location in Colorado Springs, November 23rd at that Barnes and Noble.
Okay.
And they're going to have all three books there. They're going to have In the Pines, The Lost Irvine, and Hall of Shadows, which will
Yes.
just be releasing November
Oh,
19th.
yeah, I would say that's literally only a few days after publication date.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
Um,
gonna kind of loosely call that my launch party because I don't really have a lot of people here. Like all my
yeah,
family's in Iowa, and so I'm an introvert, so
pretty
I
much.
don't really have parties. So I'm just gonna kind of call that my launch party for
Right.
Halloween.
I totally get that. It's like launch parties are a hard thing, I think, because especially if like you don't know a lot of people or you're not super connected in the community that you're in, you're like, where do I go? What businesses would want to do this? Because you're trying to think of like-minded places,
Yeah,
and it becomes kind of daunting
yeah,
sometimes. So, well, thank you so much for taking some time to chat with me today. It's been fun.
yes,
And you guys, I will link in the description uh, the link so you can get your copy of Hall of Shadows, uh, all of her socials, and anything else that I can think of that will help you connect with her to pick up some of these amazing books. Again, thank you for taking the time today and have a great rest of your day.
yes. Thanks, Matt.